Welcome back, everybody. It looks like the first two tutorials we'll do, or shots that we're going to do, are going to be number 2 from the last video selection of 4, number 2 from Max W from Germany, and number 3 from James W from Australia. So let's jump right into this. When you first start, the first thing you want to do is bring up your scopes and take a look. More importantly, the YC waveform. And that's here. The YC waveform concerns itself with tonality, so that's the first thing you want to take a look at and begin to adjust. So this is also a good indication of how you should shoot, or what a shot should look like. A good flat shot that's not too high in contrast, with your blacks crushed or your whites blown out. And you can see an example of that here. You notice down here at the bottom, the 0 mark, look at that. That's the darkest value in the whole shot. Look how much room you've got to breathe and play with. And same with up here at 100, that would be pure white, literally no information in the pixel, and you've got plenty of headroom here. So this is a really wonderfully exposed shot. This is the way you want to start. So you begin by looking here, and the way I start is I've got some presets I loaded up. And you guys can do this too in Premiere. Once you get them set up, I'll show you real quick. I've got the fast color corrector, RGB curves, 3-way color corrector, and sharpen. And I had those as my preset. You can do this too. When you have a bunch of effects in here and they're the ones you like or the ones you use the most, go ahead and select them all like this. Right click, save preset. And after you do that, down here at the very bottom in your presets menu, your favorites, that'll show up. So now you've just got to drag this, whatever you name this preset, up here and drop it, and look, it drops in all of these effects that you may use most often. So anyway, first things first, we look at our tonality. So we want to, right out of the gate, we want to boost our contrast a little bit. So I start with RGB curves. And we can see by our YC waveform here that we can bring our blacks down. So we take our low end down until it just touches 0. It's about right there. You can take a look at the shot, see how much darker that's making it. And then we bring our highlights up. And we can push these quite a bit, but you want to be very careful, because look right over here. That's this part of the shot. You can see it's getting real close to 100, and it's really important that you don't push this too far. It's too tempting to just really go up with this and brighten the shot, but look what happens. See that hard green line? You're absolutely blowing out the whites. So we want to pull this down until it's just kind of kissing right up in there, like that. So you see already the shot got more contrast, a little bit of life in it. Now, then I back up. I go to the fast color corrector, and usually, most times, the only thing I use this for is to get a better white balance, a more neutral white balance. The way you do that is you grab the eyedropper here, and you go to a section of the video that should be white. Whether it is in the shot or not is not important. It's whether it should be white, because obviously this is tinted a little dark. You can't really tell. There's no bright white. But I would guess that parts of this antenna would be white, so we'll select here. Boom, and look what happens when we did that. It pushed the whole white balance a little bit toward the blue. And keep in mind too, guys, this is all very subjective. I guess that's what makes it fun. I mean, there are 50 ways you could do this. And you may want a little warmer shot, you may want a little cooler shot, but that's up to you. When you start doing your edits, you make that call. It's a creative decision based on your personal preference, so that's up to you. Next thing I bring up with the vector scope is the RGB parade. The RGB parade concerns itself with color balance. So right out of the gate, you can see we're a little high on the low end of the blue and the green. Red's about where we need it. So let's go look at the RGB curves. We're going to take that green down a little bit. See, it brings a little more pink back into the image. We're going to take the blues low end down a little bit and bring some of the yellow back in. Same with the top of it. And what I'm doing now is pretty much just color correction, balancing the image to look like it would look if our eyes were there. Okay, take a look. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's got the shot balanced and with a decent amount of contrast and exposure. But if we jump back to the final image, you can see there's a lot more going on in the final image. So let's figure out how we got to that point. So we're here now. The big thing I wanted to do with this image, and this is what made it a little bit tricky. The sky is very bright. The ground area is very dark. So, sometimes we're forced, even when we're flying and shooting, to make a choice. Do I expose for the sky, let the land elements go black or go dark? Or do I expose for the land and let my sky elements blow out? Max has done a great job here of balancing both of those. You'll notice that he doesn't lose anything in his skies here with his exposure. I think his shutter speed was set to 30 on the shot, which traditionally that's a little bit low, but I understand exactly why he was doing that. He is trying to push this as much as he can in a somewhat of a low lighting shot. The sun's going down, the ground is very dark. He's trying to push that camera without having to raise his ISO and introduce noise. So he's pushing that shutter speed even lower. And he can get away with that because if you'll take a look, he's not moving very fast. These are very soft and subtle movements, so you don't have to worry about motion blur. So that's a great decision to shoot that low of a shutter speed to get more light into this camera for a proper exposure. Anyway, you've got this ground going on, and this is exposed about right. But I could see with my eyes that there's a lot of wonderful stuff going on up here. There's some great yellows over here, and there are these hints of blues and purples up in here. So I wanted to adjust that. Now the problem is, if I start adjusting for the sky, it's going to affect the whole image, okay? So if I start darkening this down to put more saturation in it, it's going to darken the land too, and because of that, it's going to probably crush the trees and the surrounding landscape there. So go in here and I'll push down. Now you see, look how much depth the sky begins to have and saturation. But look what happens to the land. So what we want to do with this is now do what's called a secondary color correction. And I'm going to use the 3-way color corrector to drop it right under my other 3-way that's global across the whole thing. I'm going to back out to about 50% just so I can see the outer boundaries of the image. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to make a matte. Okay, a traveling matte that where we can adjust just only the sky and leaving everything else alone. So we'll click here. I'm going to have to click over and move this back so that'll let go. I'm doing this pretty quick too, but I think you guys get the idea. And close that. All right, now we're going to move this in. We can't just put a square shape across the top of this image because the needle then will be affected. Then that won't look realistic. You'll have a needle that has a different value or color or shade or tonal range than the rest of it, the top of the needle. So we have to mask this out. Okay, there we go. Now that is masked out. Now we can make a change and let's see what happens with the sky. We'll push down. Now look at that. Everything stays untouched, but now we're really pushing those skies. Now in the 3-way color corrector, what I love about it is you can independently adjust shadows, midtones, and highlights. So let's take our shadows and pull them more to the blue. Let's take our midtones and push them up toward the yellow. Now see, we're starting to brighten this up with some tonal range in the yellows, same with the highlights. And now, again, let's look at our vector scope to see what we've got going on. Now we're just looking at the sky. So we've got to be careful here. I'm going to bring the contrast up a little bit. blowing things out here, but that's okay. We'll fix that in just a second. And you can tell I'm blowing it out because look, that hard line, but that's okay. We're going to fix that. And maybe bring up the saturation a little bit. Let's go to the mid-tone saturation. There we go. Now you can see before, after, before, after. Now that's getting there. That's much better. And again, I'm doing this pretty fast, just so it's not incredibly boring to sit and watch. But you can tweak this, as much as you like. But this is the basic principle of how to do a track matte or traveling matte. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of the shot. Click on our mask on the left, and you'll notice it's moved. So what we want to do is we want to grab those points. Oops. Place it on that right there. And now at this point, we want to go back over here, and this little stopwatch next to mask path, we click that. And what we've done now is activated this this mask to be to where we can animate it. So we're going to move ahead in the timeline. See how the needle moves out of that shape a little bit? We're going to move this over. And I notice when I did that, look what happened. It put another keyframe here automatically, right up here. So you do this throughout your whole shot. Move a few frames ahead. And move these points of your mask. So you see what I'm doing there. Now let's back up. And I'll just scrub through this and watch that path. See, that path stays right on that needle now and moves with it. That way the color correction actually travels with it. Okay. And I believe the last thing I did to this shot, I'm going to check my original. Last thing I did, and remember I sacrificed the whites here to get the rest of this kind of exposed like I wanted to, but now I want to go back in and push that back down so we're not blowing out the highlights there. So I'm going to just use the more simple corrector, which is the fast color corrector. Drop it under the three-way that I just made that traveling matte. And then I'm going to just use a circle, because this is kind of a, an irregular shape here. I'll show you. We're going to push this way up here, because this is primarily the brighter side of the shot. Push this way down here. Now we don't want to see this hard edge, where the color correction will change like we do here on the needle, but we want a hard edge. That's kind of a hard edge, edge of the image. So what we do is we go into the mask feather, and we're going to push that feather a lot. So we're going to 176 pixels for this. I'll check it on my final. Okay. Now with that set, let's bring our scopes back over. There's that crushed line. We're going to push this back down and bring down that line. There. Notice that I did that with the output levels, not the input levels. The input levels, if I grab the high end or the highlight end and push, it's going to bring more contrast. If you want to bring the output level of the whites down, you use the second slider underneath. Same goes for the blacks. If it was crushed, I would grab the output level and pull it up a little bit. You see how, look at the image while I do this, that's in the mask. See how it flattens things? So anyway, now if we look at the vector scope, the YC waveform, look at that crushed green line's gone. We got a little bit here, which is right there and there in the image. But that's certainly much better than that. Just before. Let me go full screen so we can see this. So that's before, after doing the secondary color correction to the sky, and then after. So see, we've got all these wonderful little details back. And then lastly, I believe the final thing I did, I'm going to check my original, is in Lumetri. I went to the curves in Lumetri. So let's go back to our test image we're working on here. We'll go to Lumetri, and this is a great tool because you can really selectively change the hue and saturation of specific colors while leaving everything else alone. So what I do, I put an anchor point right there in the red, maybe one in the yellow, one in the green, and over here in the blue. That way when I push and pull on one of these, it won't affect the rest of them. So I want to pull the blues. There we go. Alright, maybe push these reds up. And there's where that sky that comes in, the purple's in the sky. Let me push it way up, let you see. See, there's that. Pull it back down. A little too much. So that is that. I believe that's the last one that I used on this piece. All right, let's go to the next one. This next one is by James W. from Australia. So we'll start again the same way. Go back to our effects. Here's the beginning image. We want to look at our YSC waveform. You know, again, this shot's a little bit wider in the exposure or the contrast than the first one, but you'll notice that even though this looks bright up here, looks blown out perhaps, check this out, it's not. See, it's about 94%. If it were blown out or the whites were blown out, it would be at 100. Same for the shadows on James's shot right here. He's still got room to play. There's no pure black, nothing crushed, so that's a great thing. But now that said, this is a tricky shot because you're facing the sun, and inherently what happens when you face the sun is the whole image gets bathed with not only warm, pinkish, yellow light, but you also get this white, hazy look, very flat look that makes it even tougher to look at, or tougher to correct. But if you look at this, I noticed that these places on the shot, look at these, got these wonderful highlights because the sun is very extreme and low. Therefore, you've got immediate shadows on these waves. Look at that. And if you look closely, the shadows of these waves are this kind of deep blue, kind of an indigo blue. Now in the shot, it's hard to see that, but they're actually there. And I thought, you know what, that would be pretty cool to bring those deep shadow, blues and aqua colors out with the orange, pinkish, bright highlights. Same goes kind of for the rock over here on the left. That's a beautiful object, and it's kind of getting lost. The tonality is almost the same as the rest of the shot because it's inherent in the shot. So I wanted to kind of bring this up also. So first thing we do is I'll put in my standard. All right. Let's go to the fast color corrector and do a sample of white, what it should be like. It should be these crests on these little waves. And look at that. It makes it super, super more yellow. I mean, because apparently there's a lot of blue in that. Now, me personally, I'm looking at this, I'm like, man, that is way too yellow. So I'm going to go against what it should look like, what the white balance or the natural white should look like. And I'm going to go with what we think it should look like. So I'm going to push that, the white balance change back to neutral. Let's go in and adjust the overall contrast really quick. So bring our scopes back, take a look at this. It's not going to take much because we're close on the top, so we'll push this up. And we'll pull the darks down. Great. Alright, now you can see much different. So there is the starting image. Now on this shot, I did a couple of things. Let's jump back to the final. That's different looking, huh? Man, okay. Number one, I wanted to bring the rock up a little bit. So again, I did the same thing with the three-way color corrector. All right, there we go. Three-way color, and I grabbed the pen tool. Let me zoom out a little bit so I can see our boundaries. Let's see what 75 does. There we go. Okay, and I just want to get the rock, so I'm going to click here, click and drag, so I'll get handles. I can manipulate this. So now we've got a mask around just this big cliff rock edge, And now you see I can push that up all by itself, and that doesn't affect. I'll push it extreme so you can see the difference. But it's really a wonderful tool because, again, you're not affecting the rest of the shot. And by the way, guys, all of these, I think I've mentioned this before, everything I do here on YouTube is kind of pushed over the top. I realize that. But, with YouTube compression, I think it makes it a little easier to see the differences. How much you push something or pull something is, that's up to you. That's subjective. But I just want you guys to know all the stuff that I do is pretty hot and pretty saturated. But it is over the top. It's pushed too far. I would never do anything like that for broadcast. But, for the purpose of a tutorial, it's best to be able to see and understand what's being discussed. And you can better see that when I push it over the top a little bit. All right, so anyway, and again, as this shot moves, we'll go up to the mask where it says mask path. We'll hit the stopwatch. It activates that path now. There's a key point there. We'll move ahead a little bit. All right, and then we'll move these points. And this can be really time consuming, as you can see, because this rock has a lot of significant edges and facets to it, and it's hard to tell where should I stop, where should I keep going. Grab the whole lot of them, pull them down. So you see, as this moves, now that mask will move with it. So that's how I singled out that rock. Now the other thing, I did one more thing to the shot. I did a mask a traveling mask to the top of it here. Let me go back to the final one I corrected. All right, fast color corrector sky. I'm gonna turn that off. So you see that? Turn it back on. So I'm pushing that up just a little bit. And that fast color corrector is right there. Let me back way out. So you see I've just drawn a shape. So I wanted to punch this up a little bit because give it a little bit more contrast. And it follows the path like that. You can see the rock moving and that edge moving. So that's the second color correction, or the second secondary color correction I had to do this shot. But the next one is the toughie. And this one, I gotta admit, I got lucky. And let me show you this. This is pretty cool. We'll jump back to the image we're playing with right now. When I was looking at this shot, I thought, you know what? I thought I'm losing contrast, and where I really, really missed it was these peaks, these waves. I mean, these are kind of the focal point of the shot. The way the camera is framed and the way it's coming around, and it faces down and it's looking at these waves. I thought, man, it would be great to have these waves to pop a little bit, to get a little bit more contrast in them. So what I did was, you throw in another three-way color corrector. Right there. Now here's the trick, guys. Don't touch anything. When you drop it in, don't touch anything. The moment you adjust any one of these parameters, it automatically becomes a regular three-way corrector, and it's going to correct that whole image. Go down here to secondary color corrector. Click that. And now you're going to see a place where it's got eyedroppers and some parameter settings. Click show mask. Now the image goes completely white. Grab the eyedropper tool, the first one here, and I want to sample the white. Boom. Now look what's happening. It's now picking up whatever sample you took. Anything that was similar to that, it's picking up all that. So we go back over here and grab the eyedropper tool with the plus. Click again. And sometimes this takes absolutely forever, days. It's odd when it decides that you've picked a pixel or a color that's different to add to the selection, but you're going to just keep clicking. So you see now let me kind of scrub through this. Look what it's making. So it's creating a track mat. And after we get enough area added using the dropper tool, going back, adding to it, clicking the plus dropper, adding to it, it gets bigger and larger and it expands. You want to go down and soften it because you don't want to see a hard edge where those corrections are taking place. So we soften it. Same thing as a feather. And then you want to the edge thinning kind of expands it a little bit. So things that are on the edge, it'll kind of grab those too. And now let me jump back to the final image. Now let's look at the mask. There's the mask for those. And let's watch how it morphs and changes. Because it's only affecting those white waves, those crests. Now what does that look like in the footage? Turn the mask off. Here's the shot. Let's look at it before or without the adjustment to those crests. See, look at that. Blah. Look how flat, that is. And then with it, bright and crisp and clean. Beautiful. I think so anyway, but I'm kind of biased, I guess. I did the correction. But anyway, so that's how that was done. All right, and then the final thing, I think, let me make sure. Yeah, lumetri color. On a lot of these shots, especially on this shot, this was the way I was able to pull out the blues in the shot, because it is primarily a bright kind of pink-orange shot because of the sunset. It's, it is what it is. That's what the sun is doing. But you'll notice here in the hue and saturation curve under lumetri, I've grabbed another blue, I placed another blue anchor here and pulled it. Now if I take this and push it back, now look what happens to our blues. And some might like this better. This is actually, a different kind of cinematic look, a little bit desaturated, a little bit more pale. But that's up to you guys. You can do whatever you want with these pieces. But I'll pull it back where it was so you can see how it picks up all these wonderful blues in conjunction with, having these beautiful oranges and pinks up in here. Anyway, guys, that's about it. I'm trying to kind of keep these quick, but it's a hard call trying to determine how much information to include versus boring the heck out of everybody. But those are the basics. That's how I got the shots, the way I got them, and then experiment, and please ask questions if you want to know more. But I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. If you're just finding my channel, please subscribe and add to the comments below if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to help. And if I don't know, I'll definitely direct you to someone who does know, because I'm still learning just like everybody else. But anyway, thanks a lot, guys, and have a great day.